What's up, family? Welcome to the Community Corner, where we talk about various topics within urban community. We specialize in urban public health, urban education, health education, education policy, and creative arts. I'm the Executive Director at the Urban Health Collaborative, and I want to personally thank you for tuning into our podcast. This podcast was produced by our very own interns and our team. If you don't know who we are a public health nonprofit that focuses on building capacity and educating community members on preventable health issues and teach them ways to prevent them, as well as improve their health and overall well-being. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you stay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Community Corner podcast. I'm Isabel, and I'm here today with Anthony Gray, a mental health and harm reduction specialist, and our executive director, Zaire Ali. In today's episode, we'll be discussing mental health in today's age. What factors contribute to the deterioration or development of mental health? What are some healthy coping skills? How does the Urban Health Collaborative hope to tackle the subject of mental health when it comes to putting together events and creating educational content? So to start off, Zaire, what would you say is vital to understand about mental health and how it's defined in today's world?
That's a good question, Isabel. But I would say the most important thing, or one of the most important or key things to remember when we're talking about mental health, is that it looks different for everyone and that it's fluid. Because unlike your physical, right, if you get cut or if you fall and scrape your knee, you see it, you can feel it, and you know something is wrong, and you know when it's healed. Whereas your mental health, it's an ongoing thing, meaning there's wounds that you may not know you have, and you may not know your triggers. So we may feel we're in a good place, even if we are aware of our mental health, but something could happen, like a trigger we are unaware of, or something in that same nature that can further deteriorate our mental health, worsen it, and really just send us to a place of almost no return. Because if we don't understand our mental health, don't understand what it is, and don't understand how powerful our mental is, we can eventually keep getting beat down, and then we turn to other vices to make us feel good, but overall they're impacting our mental health negatively. And I would say the way it's kind of defined in this country and in this world is it isn't, meaning that only people who are aware of mental health try to define it, and if you don't know it, it's almost a taboo. So I know we're going to be talking a little bit later about the exact definitions of it, but I just want to say that people don't know what it is because people are scared of it, and it's such a taboo that most folks don't even understand what it is on the most surface level.
Right, of course. And I think kind of to build off of that, a lot of it has to do with accessibility to mental health resources. What are your thoughts on that? Would you say that they've improved over the years?
I would definitely say mental health resources have improved in the sense of that researchers, scientists, practitioners are more aware of it. But the issue about having better resources is the costs associated with them and the lack of accessibility to them.
Anthony, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I want to contribute to the first part about how, like, today it sometimes feels like we gotta prep for an uncomfortable conversation. So yeah, like this, the truth is a lot of folks don't, they're going through a lot of like sad things sometimes. So like when I say like we gotta prep for this conversation because of the stigma around what mental health is, and we're at a point in time where we have access to anything that we want. And as far as like the knowledge and the resources, it's just that we don't make enough time to address how we can use them and apply the resources to our everyday lives.
So to sort of build off of that last question, how do you think the progression into the digital age and things like social media impact mental health?
It's a lot of distractions. I'm for one, I'm super, I'm not a hypocrite. I'm super guilty of it. I spend a lot of time on my phone scrolling. What I'm kind of learning is how many things, like in certain like categories, it's really it's a lot. So it's really impacting. I would say, if you're not aware of it, you could find you could find yourself spending a lot of time on social media, and that's less time taken outside of your everyday lifestyle of prioritizing the things that you need to be doing as far as taking care of yourself. A lot of that time is spent being distracted on our social media.
Zaire, would you like to build off of that?
Sure. That's tough, because you think about progression of a digital age, and it happened so quick. One day we were using typewriters, and now we could type with virtual keyboards. So the part that's that's good that we have more technology, but it's also terrible, as Anthony said, is that sometimes we get so engulfed and so deep into our technology, into social media, into this virtual world, because it's an escape, that we forget about our physical. And when we forget about our physical, we forget to take care of ourselves. We forget to listen to our body. And we think that other people and other things can track and tell us our whereabouts and tell us where we need to be physically, mentally, and spiritually, instead of staying in tune with yourself. A big practice is just grounding yourself, and that means physically, but also grounding yourself in the present. But when we're on social media, when we're engulfed in technology, a lot of times we're in the past, we're in the future, but we're not in the present, in the here and now. So, for example, some people may go outside, take a walk around the woods, take a walk around the block, to really try to just release and ground themselves in the nature and in the present. But if we're doing that and we're on our phones, or we're on the phone with people, yes, we're doing something outside, yes, we're moving, but we're not in the present. We're in our conversation, or we're on our phones. So it's, yes, your body's in motion, stays in motion, but your mind is not like your physical. You need to constantly check on yourself mentally to better understand how you're feeling, how you're not feeling, and just to know what your even keel is. Because when we're off that even keel, or not aware of it, it could be really, really bad for most people.
From the perspective of students who are currently in or have graduated from higher education, how would you say that type of academic environment coincides with mental health?
I graduated from Middlesex Community College, and I'm really, really happy that they offered counseling services. It was for free, and I'm pretty sure a lot of schools do offer the counseling services. So by taking advantage of it, that kind of gave me the opportunity to understand what those safe spaces are about, and talking about the things that I'm experiencing in life, and having a professional sit there and listen to confirm and to affirm, and to give me a guidance of like better options of how I could conduct my lifestyle based off of the way that I talk to myself and the conversations and relations that I have with people. It was super, super helpful for me. I definitely encourage every student to, take some time to check those services out, because you never know what, their school, and then there's of course our personal life outside of school, and sometimes we bring that into our academia, which can definitely leave us for distractions of not addressing the mental side of it. And that type of performance is really important if you want to keep up your studies and good grades, basically.
And I guess as a student who's graduated, but also somebody who's a current student, the school setting, the academic setting, if you have enough resources and enough people in your on your team to really champion you and support you, it can be a beautiful place. But if you come from a culture or a family, or just even at a school, who doesn't have the mental health resources, who doesn't have the counseling services, who doesn't have people who are there for their students, academic settings can be detrimental to mental health because of the competitiveness, the fear of not being good enough, grades, tests, quizzes, even just some of the threats that we see happening around the country. You know, it can be scary, especially if you have students who've been home their whole life, but they never been away from home. It can be super duper daunting, and it could help worsen people who have undiagnosed mental illness or mental health problems. Whereas if you're in a setting that has culturally competent counselors, that has groups, that has clubs or different organizations that are there to support students, to foster a positive environment, it could be world of a difference. Because when we don't know or we don't have access to something that's for us and we don't have a way to get it, what's the point of having it, Or if we have a therapist or a counselor who may be amazing, but they don't understand me, where I come from, or they don't try to, that's going to hurt me more than it's going to help me. So schools and academic settings, they are a perfect place to I think, breed a positive environment of health, mental health, and just overall well-being. But they need to remember that the students are your clients and your customers, and without them, you're nothing. And we really, really, really need to do a better job of just being student first and really doing the hard work to meet them where they're at, no matter where they are at.
As students, we're constantly immersed in our academic environment, and therefore learning coping strategies, understanding how to balance work and life are all skills that are so important for us to learn. So my next question is, what advice do you have for learning about coping strategies? How would you describe your process of trial and error with many methods being offered?
During my time, and even in my work environment, the opportunities that are currently presented is the safe space. Zaire, like you were saying, when we encourage taking care of each other, when we encourage taking the time for mental health, a lot of people that aren't familiar with it do take the action of taking advantage of the services. For me personally, I came into the counseling just based off of what I was feeling in my heart and based off of everything that I was feeling around me. Knowing that there was a support system, I reached out to it, and I'm just really grateful that I've been consistent with it, and then I continue to take advantage of the resources, and I continue to ask for help out loud. And it's pretty funny because the baby that doesn't cry, there's something you got to check up on that baby. As humans, we're all we're emotional creatures. So my advice would be, if you feel something, to kind of to trust that, to trust your gut, to trust. To honor yourself and trusting that. And that's a form of self-love, that's a form of self-care, because the pain is something that gives a signal to us that there's something wrong. So really, by staying true to yourself and addressing it and not being afraid, it's like I said, it's really uncomfortable to be vulnerable just based off of everything that's kind of happening in this world. It's really difficult to be vulnerable and to trust people with your emotions and with your heart. But there definitely are safe places where you're able to do that, and you're going to be supported, and you're going to have that foundation to continue to apply those options back to yourself.
So Anthony, in specializing in harm reduction, could you describe the history of harm reduction workers and how the role they play as a mental health resource kind of works?
Yes, I would love to. Harm reduction, and I'm pulling from the sources from the Harm Reduction, National Harm Reduction and New Jersey Harm Reduction Coalition. And we find our roots and inspirations across movements and strategies across the United States, starting in like the 1960s. They gave examples of the Black Panther Party survival program, such as free breakfast for children and health clinics. The Young Lords launched the acupuncture program for heroin users in the South Bronx. The women's health movement emerging in the 1970s, feminist activism and fight for reproductive health, and a bunch of grassroots and activist response to the AIDS crisis in the 1980s and beyond. So basically, a mission, like for our mission with New Jersey Harm Reduction, is to create a New Jersey that values the safety and dignity of all people who use drugs and make evidence-informed harm reduction public health resources widely available to everyone in the state. So we're working towards a world where there is no drug war or stigma against people who use drugs. And we imagine a world where people who use drugs and all people, regardless of their status, have resources needed to stay alive and thrive. So yeah, we come from our personal experience with drug use, our love or grief for family members, and friends, professional experience, and commitments to our exposure for justice. For me personally, I use harm reduction as a sense of awareness to address the harms and the biases that I was causing, like for myself. First, I address myself, like me versus me. And whenever I do that, I'm able to create safer spaces for other people because I'm being vulnerable. I'm doing the work of listening to understand and to meet people where they're at. But first I had to, address to myself, so that way I don't pose as like a hypocrite or nothing like that. And that is kind of why I'm going to continue to stay in the harm reduction world, because this is something that's allowing people opportunity to be heard and to be understood. So that way we can start having a conversation of respect to address our underlying problems with basically experiencing life.
What would you say we're facing nationally in terms of mental health and addiction? As
a nation, over 100,000 people died from fatal overdoses. So that right there in itself, due to systemic racism and programs set in place to harm people of color, basically from the history of this country. And now we're in 2023, so there's so many subcategory problems that are now being presented due to the root of the problem of kind of how this country was founded. In New Jersey does a great job, but there's absolutely more opportunities for us to have programs to meet people, because currently with our population versus how many places there are to help, it's really lacking. So, and then with the pandemic, the numbers have increased, and now we were dealing with fentanyl, and as that got talked about, now we're doing a lot more research with xylazine and tranq within people's drug supply that's literally eating away their skin. And then we have, like I said, a lot of great health facilities, and we also have to just finish understanding that there's opportunities for us to be educated on basically what respect is. That way we kind of have to work towards not having that stigma or not having that bias to people that need help, because what will happen is the people that need help won't get help because of how they're treated, and that's just not going to help anyone. But that's basically what we kind of have to continue fighting, is just understanding that respect that we have to have with each other first.
So circling back for a moment, Zaire, are there any additional thoughts you'd like to provide?
Yes. So Anthony said said a lot of good things, and I'm just thinking about strategies and just ways that folks can improve their mental health, or really just make it not so scary. Yes, there's all different modalities. There's DBT, CBT, there's a psychoanalyst. There's all these different great things, and yes, there's a purpose for all of them. There's different skills, psychoeducation, but as individuals, the more we know, the better we are armed, and the more armor we have, because there's not one size that fits all when it comes to mental health and ways to make it better. So it is almost trial and error, because nobody's telling you that if you get one therapist, you have to stick with them. Nobody's saying that if you have one coping strategy, you have to only use that one. There's so many ways out there, but better understanding what's good for us is really all we can do, because otherwise, we may be trying to climb a tree without arms and legs, right? We may need some assistance, but the way it looks isn't always the same. And until we as a society make that known and really destigmatize mental health, therapy, psychoeducation groups, and just sharing from your heart, it's going to be really, really tough. But like Anthony said, the more we lead with love and kindness, the better it's going to be, not for ourselves, but for everyone, because the energy we put out into the world is the same energy that's going to be circulating. So the more positivity and love we put out there, the more wholesome connections we're going to build, the more people we're going to have that generally care about us. And it's just going to help nationally, I would say, with the different mental health crises that are going on post-COVID, the opioid epidemic that's happening in urban communities and the suburbs. There's so many facets to improving our health, but until we make it known that there are many ways to do it, there are different routes to get to overall healthy well-being, we're going to still be struggling looking for that one thing, whereas there's a lot of different pieces to the puzzle, and we have to just figure out what works for us and how we can create our puzzle, create our illustration, and really create our own playbook to follow.
What are some notable statistics or facts that you feel everyone should know regarding mental health and addiction?
I would say I would talk on the mental health part, and I'll let Anthony speak on the addiction aspect of it. But just from the mental health aspect, right? So there are about 300 million Americans in this country, documented at least, right? And about 57.8 million of them are dealing with some type of mental illness. And when we break that number down to Black and Hispanic populations, there's 12% Black folks in this country as our last census, and 19% Latino Hispanic population. So that's roughly about 7 million Black folks are dealing with some type of mental illness, and about 11 million Latin people or Hispanic people are dealing with some type of mental illness. And those are just the people who have clinical diagnosis. That's not to say the number of people who are dealing with some type of genetic illness or dealing with trauma or anxiety or depression that they don't really understand. And when people don't understand what they're dealing with, they turn to substances, they turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol and sugar to cope, to make themselves feel well and whole. And we know that's not always the best way. Yes, there's a use for substances. Yes, there's a use for prescription drugs, for pills, for medication. But as Anthony could attest to, when people go down the rabbit hole and they're not really whole and they don't really understand what they're doing, that could lead to addiction. And addiction's not a negative thing. Addiction is a mental illness. And once we start categorizing it as that, let's hope that some of this stigma gets lifted from it, and that we can create environments and societies where we're not looking at people who may have some type of substance addiction as a bad person, as a crook, as a criminal. We should look at them, as Anthony said earlier, a baby who didn't cry because their crying was their substance. So that's how they felt whole, or they were heard, by doing something to make sure they're not a burden on someone else. Even though you're not a burden if you're hurting, but that's what we say here. You have to pick yourself up by bootstraps, even if you don't have any shoes.
So I'm pulling this from the CDC, and it was in 2021, over 100,000 drug overdose deaths occurred in the United States. This is more specific for New Jersey. And this is also from that website. Black residents currently have the highest rate of overdose deaths among other racial ethnic groups in New Jersey. Among Black residents, the rate of overdose deaths rose from 54.6 per 100,000 persons in 2020 to 65.9 per 100,000 persons in 2021. So that means it rose. For our Hispanic residents, that rate also increased from 24.6 to 25.9. And in contrast, the rate of overdose amongst white residents decreased 37.7 per 100,000 to 34.9. So those are some stats. I guess a little bit later we're going to talk about like kind of what that means to us.
What are initiatives being taken to develop resources to treat addictions?
So, and this was released in July 28th in 2020. The Murphy administration launched the naloxone distribution program, which works with the Department of Health and the Office of Attorney General to allow eligible agencies the opportunity to request shipments for naloxone. What I involve my work in is the preparation of the kits for that and the fentanyl testing kits. And what they're doing, they're reaching, let me find here where exactly this is being pulled from, because the state is now working with first responder agencies, harm reduction agencies, libraries, re-entry programs, shelters, churches, and in a collaborative effort to assess where these overdoses were happening in New Jersey. And like I said, it's a hotspot initiative. That's what they're calling it. So that way we're going to be addressing those populations to continue to support them in the harm reduction approach, because we're in a time of change, and basically a lot of great things were coming from how we were helping people, but there's obviously still a lot room for improvement because we're still losing a lot of people. So we're taking that approach to really help out our Black and Hispanic residents, because they are the people that are dying the most from experiencing life here.
What are your thoughts on accessibility to mental health and addiction resources, and how can they be improved in the future?
I would say similar to a little bit earlier is, and even as like Anthony said, yes, there's resources out there. People are doing things. Community-based organizations are doing things, but the disconnect that I've been seeing a lot, and just the research has been telling us, is that the people who are carrying out a lot of these services, or the organizations that are doing these services, aren't really reaching the people that really, really need them. And it's a lot of times the people who need these services, they aren't aware of them, so they don't know the question to ask, or they don't know the place to go, or even if they do, they might not have the means to get there. So like Anthony said, the naloxone Yeah, naloxone, the fentanyl testing kits. Those are great, and those are great resources for people who know about them, places who know how to ask for them. But what about the hundreds and thousands of people who don't know who to ask, or don't have an address to send them to, or don't have connections with the organization who could provide them to them? Then what are we doing? So that's why I'm always going to advocate for accessibility and for community outreach, because without grassroots people coming together and really identifying communities in need, they're still going to be underrepresented in this game we call life. Because without people bridging that gap between resources, advocacy, and practice, it's always going to be a disconnect between the theorists, the practitioners, and the doers. Because doers are great at doing, researchers are great at researching, and practitioners are great at practicing. But we need to realize that within that triangle, there's some type of balance and equilibrium that we need to find to ensure that the researcher doesn't forget who they're actually serving. The practitioner doesn't forget the mindset, the culture, and all the life experience in the people they're serving. And the doers don't forget that, hey, sometimes you need to stop and reevaluate what you're doing, because yes, what you've been doing for the last 20 years might be great, but look how much we may have evolved, and look how much the culture in your community might have changed. And if we don't take that second to reevaluate ourselves, even if we believe we're doing great work, even if the world tells us you're doing great work, you're still doing a disservice to the people that need to be served.
So, Anthony, what is the mission of your agency and how do you apply it?
So I purchased my agency's AG's Agency LLC last year. That was me understanding the ownership that I have to have in order to continue to network. So right now it's a growing entity that is based around my network. So basically what I'm going to do is continue to help develop grassroots groups, anybody that wants the service of kind of understanding what a safe space is and how we can address ourselves in order to help out other people. It's going to consist of a political organ, which will be merging with other people that have already established who they are, to basically go over. It's like a newspaper. We'll talk about the history, the hindsight, the insight, which is like being present, and foresight, which kind of sees into the future. So by collecting the successes from past organizers and also looking at the failures, that way we don't make those same mistakes, and giving it an innovative new look with everything that's happening in today's world, we kind of will continue to create a safe space for people to continue to talk about how we can develop within ourselves. First, it starts with ourselves, our family, our friends, and then we'll be able to help out our community. And second, it's a promotion of the fine arts that all of my peers are doing. So we have a PDF that we make that's from the Creator's Kingdom. So I work with people, and we showcase the amazing arts our friends are doing. So if you have painting, you do poetry, if you are like a tattoo artist, if you have any type of sessions, we promote that. And that kind of gives us our voice, our ownership, and our power of the amazing things that we are doing. And as a collective, we're going to continue to showcase how we support each other. We're going to showcase how we stand with other people. And all this is just a combat against a lot of images that create our false illusion of separation, when actually we could look at things from love and being more whole.
So what resources have you pulled from in the past? Who have you worked with? Going
on 5 years, I started volunteering with Elijah's Promise Soup Kitchen. From there, I've volunteered. I continue to volunteer because that allowed me to gain experience from different orgs. I've Done outreach with Salvation Army. I've done outreach with the Newark Community Street Team, with Black Lives Matter Patterson. I have a lot of close comrades that's worked with the Newark Water Coalition, the Legal Action Center. I now work for New Jersey Harm Reduction Coalition, which is a nonprofit, and we have links with the New Jersey Policy Perspective, which is a think tank that drives policy change. Of course, now I'm linking up with Brother Zaire, and we're going to continue to talk about the great things that we're doing. A lot of grassroots and mutual aid groups that stand in solidarity. For example, I started with Shiloh, supporting homeless, innovating, loving others. Central Jersey DSA, Hope City Socialists for other options and opportunities to support people where they're at. I also linked up with a lot of environmental conservation groups for lifestyle. Ja Works, the Wellness Rebirth Retreat. And these are people that travel to Jamaica to host spiritually experiences through holistic lifestyles. I work with the Love Bug Club, which is basically another safe space where you get to do yoga, be in community with people. The Creator's Kingdom, like I said, that's our political organ to showcase the amazing arts that we're a part of. I have the Big Brother, Big Sister mentorship. Also reaches out to a lot of children. I also volunteer with them. The Impact Church in South Plainfield, they host the big giveaways for families. And they have like this huge warehouse where people come in and they get things that they could use around their home for free. And I've pulled from a lot of books. One main thing is important. I want to say the Peace in the Hood by Mr. Akil Bashir. They study a lot of that out in Newark with the Newark Community Street Team. So basically, I've been studying from like Black Panther. I've been studying from a lot of organizers that have done this work already to kind of take away the good points and, like I said, create opportunities to address the failures within this group. So I also want to say we have even like a music thing, like for people who want to be creative with music, with Willie Ibis's. We have like a SoundCloud, things like that. And a little bit more information on the Legal Action Center. They also help fight discrimination and restore opportunities for people. A lot of like YouTube groups, like Earn Your Leisure, they talk about financial literacy. Like we also have to make space for that conversation. So basically, I had the mind frame as a global humanitarian representative. So therefore, I had to address it on all levels, from the law, the politics, the human, the children, our environment, and we're bringing all of that ready. So that way, if you're interested, you have your own creative ability. You could find there's going to be a place for you, and if there's not, we're going to make one up, because everything is made up, and we're using this opportunity to operate off of love. So that way we can stay forward with our process and take care of each other.
Wow. I definitely want to say shout out to Shiloh, because they were one of the first organizations in Middlesex County that I ever volunteered with. And I wouldn't say they taught me everything I know, but they definitely showed me and put me in the position to see what the houseless population looks like, and really understand how much they're being beat down daily. And that's scary almost, because most people today are one step away from being houseless, one paycheck away. So it's like, if we don't understand that, and if we keep dehumanizing people, we're only making our society worse. So shout out to Shiloh. But I will also say, just resources that I pulled from. I do a lot of different research. So APHA Journal, American Public Health Association, American Psychological Association, the CDC, Center for Disease and Controls, Rutgers Library has a lot of resources. CUNY Library, and then also just reading different books by Paulo Coelho, Malcolm Gladwell. Man, there's so many resources out there I can name. So we're going to share that on our website a little later on. But I would say the people I worked with, the most notable folks or organizations that I worked with were possibly and most likely NEAR. It's called the National Education of Early Education Research. That's how I started my career in research, working with them for a few years, and it really opened my eyes to see, like, if we don't invest in our youngest populations and the people who teach them, we're doing a disservice to the future of our country, because the outcomes that we see from investing in early education in that workforce is tremendous. We have so many inclusion, dual language classes nowadays because of these different laws and policies. Things like Abbott in New Jersey, expansion in New Jersey. Those are some policies and laws that helped improve what we see today. It's exciting. So that's one organization. I work at the School of Education at Rutgers. I'm learning just a lot of how higher education works, and now I'm working with New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene through CUNY. I'm working with the Urban Health Collaborative, a great nonprofit organization in New Brunswick that serves communities of all walks of life, giving them education, nourishment, and a source of food, and then just giving them an opportunity to explore life with love and compassion, the support of our staff here, and then lastly, working with myself and for myself, because none of what I've done in life would be possible without me believing in me. And not to sound like cocky or anything, but if you don't believe in you, who's gonna believe in you when nobody else will? Who's gonna believe in you when you're alone? So at the end of the day, we could give a person everything they need, but if you don't teach them how to use it or don't tell them why, it's like, what's the point of doing it? So I had to go through the fire and flames of life, I guess, to better understand what I needed, what my people needed, and how to access my people to give them the resources we all need.
What can we as individuals do to contribute to mental health addiction initiatives, resources?
Every day I give thanks. I find time to affirm myself. I find time to assess myself, and that comes first. Like I said, I'm in a constant battle with myself. Like, it's me versus me first. Just like Zaire said, like, you have to believe in yourself first. I have a really creative way of taking advantage of every opportunity that I get if I'm allowed another day here with everyone else. I have a calendar that I write down God first, prayer, love, family, and what other words that come to mind, I capture them. So that way it gets me out of kind of trying to structure my creativity, like trying to put myself in a box, because I'm not here to really just consume all this information. I'm also here to create and to be and to live. Everybody has that right to do so as a human. Those things keep me and my morals grounded. That's my foundation, and that's kind of what I will always go back to, and like giving my glory to God. And that really sets the tone for how I carry myself when I walk outside of the house, because I know that I'm a reflection of everyone else. So the more love that I put inside of myself first, it's going to continue to radiate, and that energy is real. And that's how we could continue to be the light that illuminates in the darkness, is first addressing it with ourselves.
I wholesomely agree. And I feel like as individuals, first and foremost, we need to understand our why and understand who we are. Because until we understand our why, our purpose, and what we're here for, it's going to be extremely difficult to help others, to pour into others, and to pour into people who need your help and support. Because, you know, you go into certain food pantries or you go into organizations and some of the workers seem like they're so stressed out for helping a person who's coming in for help when they're there to help. And it's like, wait, something's not right here. You are trying to be a helper, but you may not be receiving the help you need, or you may not care to pour into yourself. When we're working in this field of mental health, addiction, community empowerment, we're going to be screamed at, we're going to be yelled at, people are going to look at us like we're weird at times. But we gotta realize that some people are at the lowest of the lows, and what they're giving you is a reflection of what they feel society has given them. And if they feel beat down, broke down by whoever, how are they going to be open to accept help from us? How are they going to be open to understand the messages that we're trying to give them? So it's really, really, really important to just better understand what people are going through. So I would say a lot of people, you know, if they really want to help in this field of mental health and addiction, volunteer. You know, talk to people who you wouldn't normally talk to. Put yourself in uncomfortable environments and situations so you can just fathom and experience a little bit of what some people may face on the daily, because it's really, really, really difficult to work with people who you have no understanding of, or work with communities who you're scared of, because when people are down bad, they're going to sniff out the BS. They're going to see who's really, really there for them, and they're going to know the people who are trying to use them, and they're going to let you know that you're not welcome. But the moment that you are welcomed by communities who have been historically marginalized, that's the moment where you are able to find your purpose within this work, because there's no magic formula to make it work. There's no magic formula to break down these barriers except love and compassion and putting yourself out there, opening up your guts so people can see that you are vulnerable just like them. We all are dealing with something, but until we say it out loud, until we speak into existence, it's just a thought. They're just feelings. And the more we internalize negative feelings, the worse that we're going to feel inside. Stress, anxiety, they really do kill us. And we know, as Black, Hispanic folks in this country, a lot of us, that's not good. We breed off of love, happiness, and joy. But when we internalize evilness, anger, and sadness, we're feeling that. We're filling our bodies and our hearts up with that. So the more we pour into others, positivity, and just pure love, the better we're going to be, and the better our brothers and sisters are going to be, regardless of where they're from, regardless of their background, regardless of the language they speak. You don't always need to say words to communicate.
What are some resources that the Urban Health Collaborative offers or hopes to offer as they move forward and continue to grow?
Currently, we have worked in communities around us, such as like Piscataway, Newark, Plainfield, New Brunswick, and we've provided mental health workshops, especially during COVID. We provide mental health outreach. We're trying to show people resources and just connect them to other organizations that are doing work that we don't have the capacity to do yet. And we currently have a food pantry. We because people don't realize, if you're hungry, how can you go to work? If you're hungry, how can you go to school and focus? If you're hungry and you have to choose between keeping your lights on or feeding your family, that's not okay. So we're just trying to provide all the necessities to people, education, nourishment, and a community. Because when you have those things, when you have people around you, when you have resources that are readily available, when you have the education, the know-how to dispel ignorance, which isn't a negative thing. Ignorance is just the lack of knowledge, the lack of knowing. So when we provide people with the knowledge and the resources, we believe that we can truly help shift mindsets, leading up to help make the world believe it could be a better place. Because without believing it, you can never achieve it. Yes, you need to see it, but even if you don't see it, believing it can keep you alive. Believing it can take you to the next level. And then lastly, working with community organizations such as Anthony and his agency, collaborating with people like that, not only helps the community, but it helps each other, because Anthony, his agency, his connections, they have so much knowledge and resources that I could never fathom, vice versa. But that's the part of this. That's why we are the Urban Health Collaborative, because we create community, we collaborate, and we are here to improve health in urban communities. And like I said, you're part of the community. So what do you think, or I would say, what resources would you say you have that are out here, or some places you could share, that could help?
Let's start with where we are here in New Brunswick. I know Sundays I'm working with the grassroots organization to provide its free clothes, food, and literature around people of the community. We have we just start to set up chairs for people to come sit down. Some weeks we'll have music, depending if we have the speaker. If it rains, we'll have a tent. And basically, this is just meeting people where they're at and bringing resources to where the people are at, to where it's been proven that a lot of resources aren't going to these communities, even right here in New Brunswick. And we're going to continue to support that with my nonprofit. We're going to continue to I'm running the mail-in program. So if you do need harm reduction supplies like naloxone, fentanyl testing kits, even condoms, it's free and it's confidential. I work, me and my team, we work really, really hard to make sure that New Jersey has that accessibility to harm reduction supplies. And I want to just give this group a shout out here, because last year I was providing safe spaces for people to come and speak, open words, poetry things. That right there brought a lot of connections that I've learned from. And I always love those spaces where we get to create and we get to let these things off of our chest and we're being heard. That's what the youth needs, is just more safe spaces. So that's kind of what's going on presently right now.
And something Ant mentioned, about the clothing and the community. We started the community corner, which is our thrift store, our outreach, and our entertainment. So the community corner studios, and all of it is really to provide community another avenue to share their thoughts, share their feelings, to open up conversations about mental health, to open up conversations about poverty, racism, and destruction that has happened to our communities historically, not just here in New Brunswick, not just here in New Jersey, but nationally, globally, because there's urban community, there's Black and Hispanic people everywhere that are being beat down. So the community corner isn't just something to showcase what we do or to give people a mic, but we have our thrift store, we have our mutual aid, and those things are to provide community members with jobs and resources, to provide community with clothing that they need, to help them, get that job they need if they don't have the clothes for their first few weeks of work, if they don't have their clothes for the interview, if they don't know how to make a resume, if they don't know how to do an interview. We're here for them because, as Anthony said, you can't expect to help a community. You can't expect to help people if you don't provide them with the resources or the education or the knowledge they need.
How do you think fostering a sense of community through organizations such as the Community Corner and the Urban Health Collaborative contribute to improving mental health?
Similar to like Anthony said, I keep piggybacking off of him because he's saying such great things. It's like when we really launched the Community Corner, it was a way to separate and distinguish, just educating people on mental health, giving people strategies, and really trying to reach the youth, young adults, and just communities where they're at through music, through the arts, through just creating a positive environment. So when we've had our coffee house nights or our musical and performing events, we try to base them all around health, mental health, or issues that we're facing in our personal life or we see in our community, to educate people and to spread knowledge in a non-traditional way, because music, hip-hop, rap, it's a global phenomenon. Some people have negative thoughts about it, some people have positive thoughts about it, but where we look at it, urban culture, it's whatever we can do to make us happy, to show our culture, to show our vibrance. So creating that space where people can come, share their stories, make a little money, raise money, and just foster a dope environment is crucial, because we saw, yes, the Urban Health Collaborative, the education, all those aspects are needed, but unless you give people that full spectrum where they can unwind, let their hair down, and get to know each other a little bit, it's kind of redundant, because yes, you're giving people all this information and stuff, but until you give them a representation of it physically, it's all in theory. So we try to put theory into practice through the Community Corner, through our events, and through some of the outreach and just artistic ventures that we do. And I would say, Anthony, you performed and you've been at some of those environments. From your perspective on the outside, what would you say is, I guess, innovative or new that we do that possibly sets us apart from other organizations or other places that are doing something similar?
The Black excellence that we carry kind of shows for itself. The time that I spent in there, it was nothing but other people that look like me, that related to me, and that also had unique and powerful stories and voices. So it was just really great to be a part of it. And those type of seeds that we plant, those connections, we've been nurturing them, and now everybody ended up developing, something for themselves. So I really just give thanks. Like that's really coming from our natural creative ability. So it's really give thanks.
What advice would you offer to members of the community who are interested in working in the mental health field?
The advice that I would give, kind of just buckle up, because sometimes we're battling against things that we can't see. So understanding the spiritual side of it, I would say just to really have like patience with yourself, because you're going to get met with a lot of uncomfortable situations that you won't know how to address. That's why you kind of need patience to give yourself that grace, and continue to like take care of yourself. Like, you're we're in positions where we give. So that also means that we have to apply all that giving back into ourselves, so that way we're able to show up to continue to hold that space and capacity for others. So I'll say like patience.
And I would say, like I said earlier, volunteering, getting out there and just putting yourself in situations that are new and are scary, because we're never going to truly understand what's going on until we understand what's going on. And it might sound crazy, but that's powerful, because you can want to be a politician one day, but if you've never been in politics, do you really know what you're getting into? And that's the same about mental health and harm reduction. It's like it could be different every day. It could be a new struggle and challenge every day. But if we're putting our time and efforts into solving something that's only going to help the environment, help the community, and in turn help the world, we're putting our time and effort into something that's bigger than us. Because I could only write so many chapters of a book until it's my turn to move on. But long as that book is out there and other authors can create writing chapters and continuing the story of self-help, of excellence, and of healing, then that's something that's generational. That's something that's life-changing, because it's always going to be there. It's always going to get better. And I truly believe that storytelling, music, and arts are one of the best avenues to healing.
As this episode comes to a close, I want to thank you both for joining us today, Anthony and Zaire. It was great to hear your input and to learn more about your experiences and the work that you're doing. Contributing to mental health is so important, and it will be great to see how the Urban Health Collaborative grows and how Anthony's agency grows to demonstrate that sentiment. If you would like to learn more about the work that this organization is doing, you can follow them on Instagram at the Community Corner Headquarters, at TUHECHQ. And Anthony, are there any social medias or websites you would like to give a shout out to?
Yep. Y'all could follow my agency on the gram. That's AGs_agency_. That's basically where I post a lot of my creative content and my journey with developing this entity. You'll have on there is my link to my regular account that also posts, and we showcase other art and groups that are working together with us as a collective to finish helping each other out. I can do that.
And I guess another plug, like Isabel mentioned, our website, urbanhealthcollaborative.com and communitycorner.org. We will be posting all of our resources there. Everything that Anthony mentioned, everything that Zaire mentioned, we definitely going to be posting it, because there's no point of having all this information if we're not sharing it. So, just stay tuned, because this is only the start of what's to come.
Thank you for tuning into the Community Corner podcast. We hope you enjoyed our story, and we can't wait to share it with you next time. And that's a wrap!